For taking the time to join us today. We have a very informative program on two very urgent matters. Before that, I wanted to mention that climate change was a major topic in the just finished G7 summit. Oops. I just lost my note. It did make some progress, especially on heralding the demise of coal. However, a lot of work needs to be done, and the best way we can help is to be proactive locally. By having Carrie and Rich come in, we hope it will give you some good information. Please check the chat for a link to our climate change webpage and for contact information for Nancy and myself. Nancy, it's all yours.
Okay, before I get started though, Dee Dee, do you want to give some instructions on our Zoom procedures?
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh.
So I just want to make sure all of you during the presentation, please keep yourself muted. There will be watchdogs just in case you're not muted. We will, during the course of the presentation, be putting some information into the chat. I've already put a couple links in there just now. So be sure and monitor the chat throughout the presentation. If you have a question or comment, there's two ways we're going to handle it. If you want to actually ask the question yourself, just put a question mark in the chat and Lynn Dooley will be monitoring it. If you want to just put the question in the chat and have somebody else answer the question or Lynn answer the question, just put the actual question in the chat. We will be taking questions after both Rich and Carrie do their presentation. So put them questions anytime you want into the chat and we will address them at the end of both the presentations. And as I said, make sure you keep yourself muted and unless you are going to ask the question. And then as you probably just saw, we are recording this meeting. If you don't want your video to appear, then just turn off your camera. So with that, Nancy, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dee Dee. So I'm Nancy Bell, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Climate Change Committee, along with Linda Sula, and really want to thank all of you for joining us today. This is such an important topic, both wildfires and drought, that we actually shifted our schedule. We were supposed to be learning about climate action plans this month, but felt because things are so pressing right now in regards to wildfires and droughts that we would postpone that until next month and have an opportunity for everyone to hear sooner rather than later about what the situation is with droughts and wildfires. There have been developments coming up every day. You hear something else on all fronts in this regard. And so in the process of all this, we really need to learn to adapt to living with wildfires and drought. They're not just going to go away. This is probably part of our life, just as if you live up in the Tahoe and you learn to adapt to live with snow. So here we're going to need to start adapting to living with wildfires and drought. There's a lot going on every day. For example, today, the Board of Supervisors is going to adopt an emergency climate resolution. And tonight, MMWD will be having a drought update, suggesting possible new restrictions. They won't be making any final decisions, but that'll be going on. You probably saw in this morning's IJ, Marin County received more than $1.1 million in state grants to clear out overgrown, fire-prone vegetation, threatening homes in Mill Valley, Corte Madera, and Kentfield. $1.1 million sounds like a lot of money, but it takes a lot more to do the full job, but this is a good start. And Rich, one of our speakers, will tell you more about that. Speaking of speakers, we are really lucky to have Carrie Pollard and Rich Shortall with us today. They both know of what they speak, and I think you'll find this very informative. I'm going to introduce both of them right now. And as Dee Dee said, we're going to ask you to hold your questions until the end after both have spoken. So Carrie is the Water Efficiency Manager at MMWD. She has held this position for the last 18 months, yet has been actively working in water management for over 20 years. In this role, she leads a team that deploys water-saving programs for residential, irrigation, and business customers. She's actively involved in water management leadership positions, including the board of directors for the California Water Efficiency Partnership. She's a member of the American Water Works Association Water Utility Council and president of the California Irrigation Institute. In her free time, she enjoys playing golf and planning her next trip. Good luck with both of those, Carrie. I don't think you have much free time. Rich, meanwhile, is executive coordinator for FIRESafe MARIN. He's a retired San Francisco Fire Department Assistant Deputy Chief. He was also served as the San Francisco Fire Department Emergency Medical Services Chief, Deputy Director of the San Francisco Office of Emergency Services, and General Manager of the Bay Area Super Urban Areas Security Initiative, Homeland Security. He also serves on the board of the Ross Valley Fire Department and is president of the Sleepy Hollow Fire Protection District. Rich lives in San Anselmo with his wife, Diana. So without further ado, let's get started. Carrie, why don't you take it away?
Very good. Thank you, Nancy, for that introduction. I appreciate that. Let me just start my screen share here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is cover current water supply conditions, talk about board actions and the restrictions that have been put in place, and then follow up with resources that have been developed to support our customers in achieving the water reduction goals that the board has called for. A little bit of background on Marin Water. We're the oldest municipal water district in the state of California. We're responsible for providing drinking water to over 191,000 residents in central and southern Marin. And we're also responsible for protecting and preserving 22,000 acres of watershed land up on Mount Tam. I'm sure Rich will get into the details of that more than my presentation will. Our water is locally sourced. 75% of our water comes from reservoirs up on Mount Tam. The other 25% on average comes from Sonoma County Russian River water system. So while I've only been at Marin Water for about 18 months now, I was at Sonoma Water for 16 years. So I really understand kind of the dynamics of the two organizations working together. So if you have questions about transfers and that sort of stuff, I can address those as well. So as you're probably well aware, we've had 2 very dry years. The last 16 months rainfall has been the lowest on record in more than 140 years. As a result, our reservoir levels, our supplies are really depleted. This says we're at 47%. I looked at it this morning. We're down to about 45.5% of water supply availability. And so what does that mean for us when we say, 47%? This graph, I think, really helps tell the picture. This histogram shows reservoir storage back to 1984. So after the drought of the 70s, the district doubled our water storage capacity. And you can see there's been a few years where we've had lower reservoir levels. 1990, you may recall the drought of the 90s. And then again in 2014 during the last drought. And here we are in 2021. We're at unprecedented low reservoir storage levels, which is really quite concerning. And as a result of these dry conditions, the board has a call for action. They're asking for a 40% reduction, and I'll go into that in just a moment. But first, I want to also touch on kind of future projections. So this black line here shows reservoir levels to date, starting back in January of 2020. And then we have various assumptions based on, various levels of rainfall, right? Where would we be if we get 150% of average rainfall starting this fall? This would be the purple line, right? So there's a potential we could increase storage back up to where, normal average levels, full storage levels. If we get average rainfall, it's the green. So even with average rainfall, we would just be over 50,000 acre feet going into next spring, which is not, it's better than we are now, that's for sure, but not great. This dashed blue line is 50% of average, and what we've seen over the last 2 years is basically 50% of average rainfall. So this would be, consistent with the last few years we've seen. The orange line is 25% of average rainfall. This dashed blue line shows where we would be with 40% conservation savings and an assumption of 50% of average rainfall. So it's really important. I really think that this graph shows how important it is for action to be taken now to reserve any of the water supply that's in the reservoirs as reserve as much as we can, so that we're not down in these lower levels. Because even when we get down to, you know, about 5,000 acre feet, we can't pull that water out of the reservoir. It's just the water level is just too low to even access it. So it's really, really quite concerning. So the board has been engaged in discussions around drought since back in February 16th, when they declared a voluntary action to conserve water. On April 20th, there was a water shortage emergency that was adopted by the board, and that included some mandatory water use reductions. And on May 4th, the district enacted additional restrictions really specific to irrigation. And so the goal as part of that water shortage emergency, again, is a 40% reduction in overall water use. So this doesn't mean we're asking every customer to reduce 40%. Some customers have a capacity to reduce more like 60% if they have large estates and vast lawn swaths, right? Others may not have a capacity to reduce low, you know, maybe 10% or 15%, depending on where their water use currently is. To really help our customers understand what that 40% reduction would look like, we've enacted restrictions specific to irrigation. It's really where we're leaning, because our water supply does double, or excuse me, our water demand does double during the summer. And so as we walk into these summer months, it's really important for us to leverage everything we can to reduce use in our landscaping, specifically really to lawns. So spray irrigation, so these would be your pop-ups, like generally what is irrigating lawn or grasses, pop up and they spray, or they do the rotors. Those types of sprinklers are limited to 2 days per week. Drip irrigation is limited to 3 days per week, and we have an exemption for hand watering. The exemption for hand watering is really focused on allowing folks to continue to grow their vegetable gardens. Maybe they have that, they've turned off all their other irrigation, but they have that tree that they really want to maintain the health of, or, you know, a shrub that's very valuable to them, or, you know, important to them that they want to maintain health of. And so we do allow hand watering for those purposes. We're requiring that pools and spas be covered. We're requiring that vehicles not be washed at home, but rather we're recommending that folks take them to a commercial car wash that uses recycled water. There's a couple of them, and they're on our website. We're not allowing power washing of homes or businesses. Our #1 water waste report that we're getting in is power washing, right? So businesses who are out there power washing using potable water. We are giving variances to allow folks to power wash, but they have to use recycled water, right? So, you know, we're trying to work with those businesses. We realize there's a reason why they do it. They want to keep their sites clean, and there's health and safety reasons, but using recycled water is completely appropriate for those purposes. And we're working with the businesses with that on that. We're asking folks not to wash down driveways or sidewalks, and not to water between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. So no midday watering. And we are requiring that they use shut-off nozzles. Some additional restrictions that are in place are no gutter flooding, fixing leaks within 48 hours. All golf courses are restricted to greens and tees. I will note that all of the golf courses have worked closely with the district to apply for a variance for this, which means, and they've been approved. And what that means is not that they don't have to save water. What they've actually agreed to is reducing their overall demand by 40% and reporting to us monthly on how they're doing, which allows them the flexibility to not just irrigate the greens and tees, but really manage their system as a whole. And we thought that was, you know, realistic. We actually would achieve more water savings by having them go through this variance process than we would have by just restricting them to greens and tees. So that's great. We are, like I said, encouraging use of recycled water for dust control, sewer flushing, et cetera. We're not allowing potable water for that. And no refilling or topping off decorative fountains. So pools, swimming pools, recreational pools can still be filled and topped off. That's one question that we continue to get. So how are we doing? Each week, the district on Friday publishes our tracker. This is our weekly tracker. And we compare the prior week's usage, or our production levels, to our baseline, which is actually a 3-year average of 2018, 19, and 20. And we do this because 2020 demand was kind of off because of COVID, right? There was just a shift in use. So, we didn't think using just last year would be, is realistic. So we did an average. Anyway, so for last week, we were at 18%. So the week before that, we were at 11%. So we are starting, and the week before that, we were at 2%. So that's frightening. So we are just starting to see movement around water savings. And I think it is really hand in hand with the public outreach and folks kind of seeing and realizing, the drought conditions we are experiencing. But again, nowhere near the 18%, or excuse me, the 40% that we've been calling for well over a month. As far as resources, we do have a number of tips and information available on our website. I'll touch on a few of them briefly, and then I'll talk about some programs we're offering. So we're asking folks to turn off their sprinklers and water by hand. It's not a prohibition, it's not a requirement, but we're asking everyone to just do their part. And this is a great way to get some significant water savings. To replace your lawn, and I have some programs on that in a moment. And then also to use a smart irrigation controller. So this is an irrigation timer that self-adjusts your irrigation to your landscape based on weather conditions. Historically, during the last drought of 2014, 15, we didn't go into mandatory conservation. It was voluntary. Granted, it was statewide, so there was a lot of media kind of all over the state talking about drought. But just looking at the voluntary actions, and really the call to action that time was adjusting your behavior, and changing behavior is really a great way to achieve significant water savings. So using a broom instead of a hose, installing water efficient fixtures. Just this last weekend, we had the Drought drop by, where we gave out free shower heads, faucet aerators, hose and nozzles, buckets, leak detection tablets, all of those items. And we had over 1,100 folks stop by and pick those up. All of those items are still available from the district, except the buckets. We did run out of buckets, but we're looking at getting more and doing this again. But it's really looking at the behavior aspects of saving water. So taking shorter showers, using a low flow shower head, but also taking shorter showers, turning off the water when you brush your teeth. These small habits really provide significant savings, especially when we all do them together, when we all are participating. The district does offer free phone consultations to help you figure out which conservation programs or rebates might be appropriate for you. Our phone number and email is listed there. You can give us a call and we'd be happy to walk any of our customers through our programming. So this would be residential, businesses, landscape, and irrigation type customers, municipal, doesn't matter. We'll work with all of them equally. As mentioned, we do have free hose and nozzles and hardware for folks to reduce their use. We've launched a turf replacement rebate. So for anyone who has a lawn area that they're considering or able and willing to get rid of, the district will pay you $3 per square foot. It was $1 per square foot up until when the drought hit. We increased that amount to really hope to motivate folks to kind of make that change. In addition, we have a Mulch Madness program, which is a free sheet mulching program, a free sheet mulching service. We're working with the Conservation Corps of the North Bay to train local youths on landscape maintenance. And they'll actually come out and do the work to take your lawn out, take your grass or your turf area, lawn, grass, turf, they're all the same thing, to get rid of that and then sheet mulch it, and then prepare, that really will prepare the soil and the landscaping for replanting once the drought's over. So we're asking that no one replant now, but really wait until the drought ends. And I know there'll be questions following Rich's conversation as well about how about mulch and how fire safe is it and all of that. And so we'll listen to his presentation and then we can address that in the Q&A, I'm sure. We're offering smart irrigation controller rebates for both ratio irrigation controllers, which they're very cool. You can adjust your irrigation system based on from your cell phone or your pad or your computer, your tablet or your computer. It really kind of takes the guesswork out of how long you should be irrigating, which is one of the biggest questions most customers have around determining irrigation run times. And we also have a clothes washer rebate for $100. We do have some drought-proof water supply incentive programs that we've offered through utilizing gray water and rainwater. So for gray water, we have the laundry to landscape rebate. We're offering a $100 discount through the Urban Farmer Store on gray water kits. We do require a participation in an informational webinar because gray water may have pathogens in it, and you need to understand how to use it safely and appropriately. But it's a great opportunity to have a really truly a drought-proof supply available for those plants that you may want to maintain during the drought. Of course, no root vegetables, but great for fruit trees and other types of plant material. And then as far as rain barrels, we're offering 50 cents a gallon for storage. And so we do estimate that you'll get, kind of a fill and use about 4 times each year, because, sometimes we do get really dry Januaries, but we get, there's moisture at some point in the month. You can kind of use that barrel for your irrigation when it is dry, and then it will refill, and we estimate it'll refill 4 times. So there's an opportunity to offset some of your water use, and again, provide on-site water, which is another great resource. Let's see, oops, skipped one. We're offering a flume rebate. So flume is a new technology and a new kind of water management device that's hit the market, and our customers have really found that it's quite useful. So what it is it attaches to your water meter. So it does require installation. You have to go out and open your water meter lid, and it straps onto your water meter. It's just this small rubber kind of device that attaches to it. And then there's a bridge that plugs into your home and connects to your Wi-Fi. And it tracks your water use down to the minute. You can see, it will tell you when irrigation is occurring. So you can see on this snapshot here of the phone, this darker teal is irrigation, the lighter color is indoor use, and it really helps customers understand where they're using water and how they're using water, because getting your water bill every 60 days, it really is a challenge to understand, kind of dig in and realize where there's an opportunity to save when you can't really see the detail of the water use. These are available to our customers for $50, and the district is paying $115. So it's a great device, very simple to use and very informative. For folks who have to wait a long time for their water to get hot at their, maybe at a sink that's furthest from their water heater, we're offering a hot water recirculating system rebate, $50. And because we are requiring pool covers, we are offering a $100 pool cover rebate. As far as spreading the word, we're looking to encourage all of our community members to put out yard signs and share information that they learn from these talks with your friends and family and neighbors, to really help educate the entire community about the drought conditions we are facing. Our website, marinwater.org/conserve, has updated information on water supply conditions, reservoir levels, program offerings, tips, water waste report. All of that information is available on our website. We are asking our customers and asking the community to assist us in reporting water waste. So if you see someone watering midday, generally it's not because they want to be a water waster. It's really they don't know that these restrictions are in place. And so we look at this as an opportunity to educate the community on water supply conditions. And so if you happen to see anyone not complying with either the 2-day-a-week or midday irrigation, please let us know and we'll reach out to them. And we won't tell them who told us. We just we want to increase the education around all of this. And so with that, here is my contact information, and we can I will drop that in the chat. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Rich, and he can cover the FIRESafe MARIN presentation.
Very good. Thanks, Carrie. That was great. All right. Okay, can everybody see this? Good. All right, wonderful. So my focus is on wildfire preparedness in Marin. If we look at some of the logos on the screen, obviously I'm representing FIRESafe MARIN. Our primary mission is educational. You'll see down at the bottom, the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. The Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority is doing a fantastic job. That was what was created by Measure C. And I do want to thank the League of Women Voters, who were big supporters of that. And you guys really helped quite a bit. I thank you very much. And really, the creation of that authority is what has allowed FIRESafe MARIN to really expand its mission, bring on some staff, do a lot more training and programming. And then a lot of the work that we do is through a program called FireWise USA. FireWise USA is basically community preparedness, neighbor helping neighbor. get the word out and so forth. So that's sort of the lay of the landscape here in Marin. So what is FIRESafe Marin up to? Again, our focus really is on helping residents to prepare, or the operative word, as Nancy said earlier today now, is adapt. We live in Marin. Wildfires are going to be in our future always. We need to learn how to adapt to that. And that means that residents need to take action. So in order to find out what to do to get the word out, how can that help you? We have a really good website. If you haven't visited, I suggest you take a look at it. It's live now, but it's about to undergo a major revision. So in about a month, it's going to have a different look to it. But there's just a ton of great information out there. It's pretty much state of the art. It's a couple 100,000 visits a year, and it's actually a nationally recognized wildfire preparedness website. Our monthly webinars are, I think, very interesting. We do them the last Tuesday of the month. The next one that's coming up on the 29th of this month should be popular because it's about pets, everything from cockatoos to horses. So it should be quite interesting what you need to prepare. And the two women who are presenting actually have quite a bit of experience doing this. They have a lot of really good sort of war stories of what happens with pets during disasters and so forth. We do workshops, and the workshops are a way to focus on specific areas of Marin. Marin Wildfire Prevention Authorities has 5 zones. Each zone has individual workshops. We just finished all the workshops. If you're interested in the workshop for the area that you're in, go to the FIRESafe Marin YouTube channel, which comes up now, where all the recordings are kept of our past webinars, and we probably have 80 plus wildfire videos on there. Everything you want to know about decks, home hardening, etc. It's really interesting and worth perusing through. I mentioned FireWise USA. That's a program we support strongly. Overall, about over 20,000 people live in FireWise USA sites in Marin, which is a pretty good chunk of the population. And they really do tend to be located in the areas that need the most work, the wildland urban interface areas. Chipper days are a big deal. If you haven't ever taken advantage of that, it's free curbside pickup. Everybody in Marin gets 2 pickups this year. Program is underway for about a month. Chipper Day, I'll get into a little bit more, but you can register at chipperday.com/Marin. We started partnering with school districts. We created a program for 5th graders, which is actually the year that it kind of fits in with the science program where they do some disaster training. So we created a whole program. It's online training, which obviously in COVID was pretty popular for them, but to orient its students to wildfire science and actions they could take. And the real purpose of it actually is when you work with students that age and you give them homework and they go home, they get the parents involved. And if there's ever a group that's difficult, I use my son as an example, I'm always saying, how come you never come to our webinars where he goes, I got 4 kids, I got to go to work, I got all these things I got to do, I don't have time for it. But when the kids come home and say, here's the homework, you need to get involved with me, well, that gets parents engaged. Marin SIL is the Marin Center for Independent Living. We have a memorandum of understanding with them. We're going to be doing a lot more work with them in the future. But if you really look at their membership, the access and functional needs community, a very large percentage of Marin actually fits into that. And these are the most vulnerable people. When we have a disaster, it really isn't young people who perish in the typical wildfires and whatnot. It is either older people, people with mobility issues and so forth, who don't have the wherewithal, they don't have a car, they don't have the help to get out, and they unfortunately are left behind. So we really want to do a lot of work trying to reach out to that community to help them get better prepared. Contractors in Marin County, we're a relatively wealthy county, and an awful lot of people have their yard work done by landscape contractors. So we started working with the Northern California Landscape Contractor Association earlier this year. And surprisingly enough, most landscape contractors, home gardeners and whatnot, don't really know anything about wildfire or what planning and adaptations should be made to make the lawns a little bit more fire smart. And then the last one this year, we're doing some work around the Get Ready program, which is more of a all hazard disaster training. So we're all about preparedness programming at FIRESafe Marin. So I know Nancy has seen this before. She asked me to show a little bit of this video clip. Before I bring it on, honestly, a lot of people have misunderstandings about how wildfire actually happens. The sort of wildfire 101, 101 wildfire science. It's all about embers. And so we'll see a little bit of this here. Oops, sorry, just jumped back the wrong way. Excuse me. I gotta remember where I was. I'm sorry.
Illustrated right here. We're talking about the surface, the ground, the area.
Yeah, it's gonna start just a second here.
And Rich pointed out that we've got a lot of information on home hardening. We've got information on defensible space, landscaping, plant selection. All of these things tie together. They're all important. None of them stand alone. But I really think that we've learned that this zone 0, this first 5 feet, is the most critical place for you to pay attention to. And what I like is that it's also the easiest place for homeowners to take action. So recap here. Most homes are going to ignite from embers. I'm going to show you a couple images that will help you understand.
Can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
No.
This is video
Sorry.
from a police officer's dashboard cam during a
More.
campfire.
That's all I got.
Wow.
You can see the intensity, the number. of
Okay,
embers
I turned mine up.
going across a road. Presumably there are homes in that vicinity. This is a fantastic illustration of what those embers can do. In this case, in the forest or grasslands around the community. Again, this is the campfire. These are embers falling from the sky. And look back down when he swings the camera back down. Look what's happened in the few seconds since they turned the camera to the sky. These are spot fires that have ignited in fine grasses, fine vegetation fuels. And frankly, the same thing was happening in the front yards and around the surfaces around homes in that same vicinity. Here's another image very similar to the ones that Jack showed you, but we can't overstate the importance of recognizing that those embers, when they land on surfaces around the home, when they land on the combustible materials around the outside of the home, in your bark mulch, for example, those materials will ignite, leaving green trees in the vicinity of this home. This is research that I think Steve was intimately involved in, but it's one of the best illustrations. This is a home that IBHS built in a laboratory setting. The right-hand side of the home was built with ignition-resistant materials. The left-hand side, not so much. The left-hand side used a bark mulch within 5 feet of the structure. The right-hand side used a decorative gravel mulch, and you can see the dramatic difference in the resistance to the embers that are being blown at this building. This is just the best illustration you're going to see of what we're talking about. This translates directly into the real world. This is a photograph. I apologize that it's blurry. It's the best copy I've been able to find of this picture, but this is a firefighter trying to protect a home during the Woolsey fire in 2018, burning on the same day that the campfire was burning in Northern California. This was in Southern California. And you can see exactly where the embers are accumulating, and you can see that it's the bark mulch around the exterior of this stucco home that has ignited, giving this firefighter a real run for his money.
Okay, so this is really, I think, something the obvious takeaway from this, which is that, excuse me, get back up in there, that what really creates the damage in wildfires, what burns homes down, are embers. Every single day in my inbox at FIRESafe MARIN, I get the following email from somebody. I'm concerned about this tree at my neighbor's property. I'm concerned about the tree in open space. I'm concerned about the tree. It's not the trees that are burning down the homes. It's the embers. The embers land in areas that are vulnerable in homes. I'll get a little bit more in the future of this. So the problem is not trees. You saw that home that was burned down there. All the trees surrounding it were untouched, unscathed. The embers hit those trees, but those trees did not burn because a typical tree is extremely moist. And trees have a lot of moisture in them. It's true that there can be fires that are out in the truly forested lands that are fairly dense. Think of like Lake Tahoe forest, where you can get enough heat to get what they call a crown fire, where the trees are mingled right next to each other, and you'll see the big trees burning in that circumstance. But that's not what typically happens where our homes are. the type of trees and vegetation that we have around the homes, trees in particular, are actually not very vulnerable to the embers, but the homes themselves are. So, oops, there we go. All right. So we have 4 areas that we really talk a lot about. The first one is personal preparedness. You need to have a wildfire evacuation checklist so that you've prepared ahead of time if you need to evacuate. You need to have the right clothing. You need to have a go bag. You need to think about Tabby the cat. You can't be out there chasing it down at the last minute. You should make sure that you have adequate insurance. When we had the fires in the 3 or 4 years ago up there in Calistoga going to Santa Rosa, something like 70% of the homeowners had either no insurance or inadequate insurance. I went on my own insurance company and negotiated with them a little bit to make some very simple changes. It cost me about 10% more on my policy, but I was really comfortable that I was absolutely covered for everything. In some instances, battery backups make sense, like garage doors. Now, one of the things that happened, if everybody remembers Fountain Grove up there, Fountain Grove was a relatively modern community that burned down. The reason it burned down is most people, they go, okay, I got to leave. Great, I get it. There's no electricity. They figure out how to open the garage door. They jump in the car, they drive off, and they leave the garage door open. All those embers go flying into the garage, house is burned down to the ground. And then the last thing, and I'm sure all of you are compliant with this, but you need to sign up for the warning systems. Alert Marin's #1, Nixle, social media, TV news, and so forth. You really need to be signed up for this. All of these are things that will help prepare you in advance for wildfire. It's all about preparation. The #1 question, if we had smoke in the air right now, the tree issue wouldn't be as big. I'd be getting all these questions about evacuation every day. What do I do? It's real simple. If you're prepared ahead of time, when the evacuation warning comes or there's a lot of smoke in the air and you're concerned, you can be out of the house in 10 minutes and you're going to beat all the traffic and you're really not going to have a problem. So that's the strategy on evacuation. The next one, and we saw all of this on the embers, is preparing the home. So I got a chance to feature some of my grandkids over here, but one of the things you want to do on one of these red flag warning days, most of us have furniture around the house with seat cushions and whatnot that are very vulnerable to embers. Just pick them up and put them inside for the duration of the red flag warning and then put them out again. Good way to enlist the help of the kids. Leaves on the roof, stream vulnerability, and it's a pain cleaning them. We all know it. It's really hard to keep up with it. I got a bunch of trees by my house and it's a pain. But if the ember shower comes, they're going to land in all that. And even though the roof is a non-combustible roof, enough heat's generated to start a fire inside the home. Under decks is another area that's extremely vulnerable. You can't have storage under there. You really should have gravel mulches on there. You should have it screened depending on the size of whatnot. But decks can be extremely vulnerable. You see the embers come in, they fall down, they land in all the debris that's under the decks. On the right-hand side of the screen here, you'll see of the screen, you will see screens or vent coverings. All of our homes have openings that are necessary to ventilate the attic spaces and the under part of the house, the crawl spaces and whatnot. For many older homes in Marin County, the vents that were installed were the improper size. They're too big, the screens, and embers can get through them. So you want to put modern screening on. The vents that I'm showing here is kind of slick type of vent because on the outside you see screen that's the proper size, but on the inside is a fusible material. So if it gets hot, it fuses and prevents any flame from getting in there. So that particular one's a Vulcan vent, but there's other manufacturers that make those vents. And then the same thing, you have to look at the screening that's up on the attic on your roof. So all of these are strategies to harden your home. That first 5 feet's really important though. You really want that as clean as possible. And then fire resistant, actually, I'm not even really liking that word anymore. It's fire smart, I think is the better one, fire smart landscaping. And this fits in actually very nicely with where we need to go to be dealing with drought and future droughts. This is an opportunity to start spacing things out, create space in the yards, create plant islands, use the appropriate mulches, vertical and horizontal spacing, and then really important, replant with drought resistant plants. I know we can't do it this year, but there will be time in the future. there's an aesthetic of Marin that is really not a fire smart aesthetic that we've all come to value. We like our juniper, we like our Italian cypress, we like our bamboo, we like the big bushes that hide the foundation from the public and whatnot. We need a transformation, a mental transformation to say, well, you know what? A fire smart landscape is really one that I prefer. It works better, it looks better, but it's an aesthetic. The hardest time we have in getting people to make changes is a reluctance to change some very dated plantings that they've had for a long time because they can't envision how to look like in the future. But here are some examples. They look really great, and hardscaping, the walls and things like that, they're attractive and they really save us from the drought, save us from fire. So fire smart landscaping is the way to go. We work very closely with UC Marin Master Gardeners, who's a tremendous resource in helping all of this. And you can look at our website for ideas, and then you can go to their help site. They're really fantastic on that. And MMWD has a lot of information too on smart plantings and drought resistance and whatnot. And then the last one is community preparedness. You know, it's great. We get out there, we do our webinars, or the fire chiefs get on the TV and say, it's a bad season come up, you know, cut the grass, all the stuff. But what really works is the social pressure neighbor to neighbor. In some cases, neighbors are reluctant to make the changes because they don't have the ability to do it. They don't have the money, they don't have whatever. And a lot of times somebody can get in there and say, hey, I'll give you a hand. We'll help you cut the grass. We'll help you clean up the leaves. We'll do a little smart landscaping for you. It's just a reminder to people that within our community, all of us have to work on this together. All of us have to learn to adapt, and in doing it, neighbor helping neighbor is the best way. That's why we like the FireWise USA program. And then these are the partner agencies who are involved with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. Again, I saw Julie McMillan had to leave the meeting, but she's on the board of directors for MWPA. They're really doing a good job. And I really focused on prevention for this because this is really what residents and homeowners need to know. But that organization is also going to be doing the larger vegetation fuel management projects, type of things that you heard about in the Marin Independent Journal today, when you get, you know, a couple $1 million to do to reduce vegetation and the fuel load and whatnot. MWPA is helping to coordinate a lot of that type of work. So with that, I'm finished, and I'll turn back to our host, but happy to answer any questions when appropriate.
Great. Thank you so much, both Carrie and Rich. So informative. I was making 1,000 notes here. Can't wait to talk to other people about it too, including the HOA. So anyway, again, thank you so much. I have a question for each of you before we go to our guests. How do the different agencies in Marin work together when they form ideas, whether it be for water, for fire, or anything else? Is there a certain protocol involved?
So I'll take it first, Carrie, if it's okay. So on a couple of levels, the Marin County, and I know this because I've dealt with several other counties, their spirit of cooperation is extremely high in Marin. So I'll begin with the fire services. They have a Fire Chiefs Association. All of the fire chiefs work very closely together to look at the big picture of Marin, because fire knows no boundaries. So something happens in Mill Valley, before you know it's in Corte Madera and so forth. So they coordinate it. The Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority was set up as a joint powers authority to coordinate all those cities, towns, special districts, so that we're planning collaboratively. And we may have a project. So I live in Sleepy Hollow. So if work is done on the hill between Terra Linda and Sleepy Hollow, if 80% of that work is on the Terra Linda side, we still get 100% of that, of the value of that work here in Sleepy Hollow, because it's strategic. So that's the whole idea of the MWPA. And then the fire world and MWPA, the level of cooperation is very high. And then the last part of that is, so that we're all on the same page. FIRESafe MARIN is sort of the single voice of messaging for how to do all these things, for residents and whatnot. So we all work together to make sure we're providing the same information to everybody.
Yeah, so for example, kind of bring it down to a smaller scale. For our mulch and turf replacement programs, right? So we reached out to FIRESafe MARIN when we said we want to launch a program where we're sheet mulching, at folks' homes. But we want to make sure that the materials we use align with FIRESafe MARIN's, original intent. And so we work with them on the type of mulch we're installing, make sure it has a high organic material level, and we're not doing any installations within 5 feet. So we have that zone 0. We're leaving that up to the homeowner. We're encouraging them to do gravel or other type of material, not put mulch in, not put bark down, to ensure that the embers don't become an issue there. So there's definitely coordination between our organization when we're doing program development, and then of course at the higher level in maintaining the watershed. There's a lot of coordination between our watershed folks and FIRESafe MARIN as well.
Great. Okay. And is there a certain type of mulch that's better than others?
Well, that depends. What's the application? So, for example, gravel mulch could be very effective in certain cases. There's pros and cons to it. It depends on what the plants that are surrounding with it. The one thing that we are really down on is so-called gorilla hair. I think everybody knows what that looks like. Mm-hmm. I'm just astounded how often it gets used. It's very flammable. It's not going to result if the embers landed in giant flames, but it sort of smolders. And there was just recently a fire that started in that, and then it spread over to a fence, and then the fence spread over to the house. Mm-hmm. Or up in Sonoma, there's red bark versus black bark, and the red bark performed very poorly compared to black bark. So you kind of have to look at what the characteristics of the mulch that you're using and what the application is. And it's not always mulch. Sometimes compost is the better answer. It really, I hate to say it depends, but it honestly does depend.
I found that a realtor used gorilla mulch for a house that was for sale. So we might start with realtors.
Yeah, we've talked to the realtors. People like the gorilla mulch because it tends to not wash away. It's not that expensive. It has a certain look to it. I just saw a house 2 doors up that just went up for sale. They did exactly what you described. I wish it could be banned. It's just not a good choice. There's a lot of other mulches that work just as well. They have a little different look and feel to them, but it's not a good choice.
Yeah.
So it looks like Linda is frozen.
Sorry about it. I'm trying to figure out.
So let me, while
My
you're
camera's
working
not
on that,
responding.
let me ask, there are a couple of questions in the chat, and I'm just going to start at the top, which means that it's Carrie's presentation that they started asking questions. So the first
Can
one.
I just interrupt? I have to leave at 12 and a number of the questions are mine. So just know I'm still interested in the answers and I'm glad it's being recorded.
Okay, so
Thank you.
you're next, but Lynn Spitzer asked, wasn't Tiburon included in the 1.1 million to clear brush and fire threats?
I have to say, I'm not sure. And the reason I'm not sure is Tiburon and Belvedere chose not to participate in the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. And so I'm not sure who applied for that grant. And that would make a difference, whether they were included it or not.
All right, so Elaine's question is next and Linda's back. So Elaine, do you want to ask your question?
You have it up on your screen right now, right? Why don't you
just ask it for me?
Okay, so Elaine asks, I live in the unincorporated area of Marinwood and see 1/4 of the trees on our northern hills dying. Who has money and the responsibility to handle this situation since we aren't Mill Valley, Kentfield, or Corte Madera?
So the ultimate responsibility is the owner of the land. So I'm guessing that some of that land might be Marin County Open Space District. So they would have the responsibility if they own it. I just want to advise everybody not to focus on the trees in areas like that. That's really not the biggest problem. So, we talked about all the things that residents can do. I will say that the open space district, and I know the water district also, they spend a lot of money and do a lot of work every year to maintain their properties. That doesn't necessarily mean that every tree that's dead needs to be taken down. They can be maintained there's other ways to maintain the properties with shaded fuel breaks and whatnot. There is some natural process with trees and how they survive and how the canopy works and whatnot. And they have professionals, and that's what they do. They evaluate all that and make decisions based on the health of the forest.
So I'm just going to jump ahead to Elaine again, because she says she has to leave. So the question is hand watering limited to before 9 and after 7 also? And hold on one second. And some of us have been conserving since the last drought. And so now what do we do? So those are her 2 questions.
Yeah, okay. So for the hand watering, what the ordinance says is that all irrigation must occur before 9 a.m. or after 7 p.m. And it's all about evaporation, right? So even if you're hand watering, you're going to see a level of evaporation. So we want to minimize that. As far as conserving, what else you can do? So, you know, the calculations show for indoor use, if you're at 35 gallons per person per day, and you could look at your winter water bill to figure out, you know, where you're at. If you're using less than 35 gallons per person per day, you are doing amazing. You are as efficient as one can be, you know, outside of health and safety. If you're beyond that, you know, there might be a bit more opportunity. If you are down at that level or anywhere close to 35, the best thing you could do to help us all conserve is to share information with your neighbors, your friends and family to make sure that they're aware of the water supply conditions. You know, if you're at 35, you're doing great. So take a look at that.
Lynn, can you continue with the chat room questions? Because for some reason, none of the chats appearing in my chat room.
Sure. So
Thank you.
Lynn Spitzer asks, what is the prediction for rainfall this fall? Do we have an idea?
Oh, if I knew, I would not be here right now, let me tell you. I mean, so last 2 years, like I said, have been, you know, the last 16 months have been the driest 16 months in 140 years. So all we could do is assume that we're going to see what we've seen the last 2 years, which is less than 50% of rainfall. And that's what we're planning for, right? So we're hoping for the best and planning for the worst. And that is why the board is going to continue to look at further landscape irrigation restrictions. Tonight is an informational item, and then at our following board meeting, in the first meeting in July, reducing overhead spray irrigation to either 1 day a week or 0 days per week, acknowledging that with our limited supply, should we really be putting it on lawns? Is turf grass really the best use of that limited water supply we have available? And that will be up to the board to decide.
That makes sense. Nancy Bell asks, has anyone looked into fog capture as a way to collect moisture in the air?
So I would say yes, everything's on the table. I think what they determined when they looked at it for our 2040 water resource plan document was that it wasn't feasible, or that rather it was so expensive it wasn't feasible. It wasn't that it wasn't impossible. It was just, way more expensive than any of our other water supply options that had been presented. But I manage the water efficiency program. I don't do operations, but they are aware of it and they have looked into it. And that report is on our website. It's the 2040 water resource plan if you were interested.
Great. Elaine has another question. What time is the webinar on Tuesday for fire and pets?
It is, I actually just put it into the chat too, but it's Tuesday, June 29th, 6 p.m. And you can go to our website to find the Zoom link there, or subscribe to our newsletter, better yet, and then it'll give you the information every month about the webinars.
So just a reminder, you can go to your 3 dots in your chat box and save the chat yourself, and you can keep all of the valuable links and information there. Okay, Annie says, can we advise neighbors and friends to watch this program? I would say yes. And Nancy, you'll be.
Let me unmute myself. What I mean is, how long will this program be available to recommend to other people to see it? There's so much in it. I would like to see it again. So
Annie, we will be posting the video of this whole presentation on the League's YouTube channel, and it'll be available. I'll send an email out with a link. So, and you can share that with anybody in the world, and we will do all we can to promote it, but it'll be there forever.
Annie also wants to know if there are businesses to help elderly families do some of this preparation.
So there's lots of business, obviously, that can do the preparation. I'm assuming the question might have more to do with financial help for that. If you need businesses, we have a contractors list on the FIRESafe MARIN website. But the usual question is there financial assistance? So it depends on where you live. If you live in Novato, they have a pretty good program up there through the fire department that you can apply for to get help. If you live in San Rafael, they have more limited assistance, but they do have some. If you live in Central Marin and West Marin, they're just getting ready to create some grants in the near future. And then the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority is going to have a grant program for qualifying seniors, AFN folks. I was hoping it was going to happen this summer. I think it's going to take longer than that, but once it gets up, it'll be fairly substantial. Will be around for quite a while. So if you need more help, write to us at FIRESafe MARIN, and we can give you some links to where that is.
So that's wonderful. Thank you. Where do we get the yard signs that Carrie mentioned? Nancy asks.
Yeah, so we just had the Drought drive-by on Saturday, and we gave away the last of our 500 signs. So we're reprinting. So it'll be a week or so before we get them, but they can be picked up at our office. So you're going to want to send an email to conservation@marinwater.org and request one, and then we'll coordinate with you to have them, make sure that we have them available. We don't want you just stopping by since how they're not there yet. As far as additional Drought drive-by events, we are looking to have another. It was quite successful, the one we just had on Saturday. We actually ran out of materials in an hour and a half. We didn't anticipate that at all, which means there's so much interest, and that's wonderful. So we're looking in late July, depends on how soon it'll be before we can get additional, deliveries of shower heads and buckets and faucet aerators and such from the manufacturers. So as you all know, there's backlogs of getting materials in various capacities. So we'll have it on our website and social media and all the other outreach channels that we use once that date has been established. In the meantime, we do have some hardware available at the office. You could shoot us an email and we can set it up so you could drop by and pick it up.
And would you mind just repeating that email so I can stick it in the chat?
It's conservation@marinwater.org. And I dropped it in the chat as well earlier.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. Okay, so Nancy asks, Rich, with the heat wave predicted for this week, do you anticipate them announcing any red flag warnings?
So to get the red flag warning, it's kind of a combination of things. It actually, believe it or not, it's actually not heat related. The first one, it's winds, how strong they are. And then the second one is moisture content. So obviously hot weather can dry out the fuels, but there's other things, winds and whatnot, that can't. So they're really looking at relative humidity, the wind speed, and there's kind of a measurement of the moisture content within vegetation. And if all of that lines up, then they'll declare them. It's a little tricky on these red flag warnings, and I think sometimes it's not helpful, because if you read them closely, a lot of times it'll be a red flag warning above a certain elevation. I think example would be like 1,500 feet. So the only elevation in Marin that fits that is Mount Tam, but it ends up putting all of Marin under a red flag warning. And we have this thing all the time, well, gee, it's supposed to be so windy, it's not windy in my house. This is, it seems like it's not realistic. So there's some discussion about maybe improving some of what all of that means, basically. So it's it is important because we're not going to have a catastrophic wildfire on a day that does not have the winds of a red flag warning day. So if we had a fire today, we could still have a decent sized fire, but we're not having the type of thing that you experienced up there in Paradise, being the classic example of that, unless you really have big winds. If you look at the videos of that, or the old videos of the Oakland Hills fire, you'll be astounded at how windy it is. And that's what blows the embers miles ahead of the fire. And that's what makes it hard for the fire department to get ahead of it. If you have a day like today, they'll have helicopters and airplanes and hand crews on it really pretty quick, and you can sort of get a handle on it. But when that wind just moves it, like in no time at all, it's just jump long distances. So red flag warnings do matter, because it's the only days you have to worry about evacuation in a big way are the red flag warning type days.
That's great. Thank you very much for clarifying that. Nancy, you've got a bunch of questions. Do you want to just ask them?
Sure. I just keep thinking of all the things that have popped in my mind and all the many webinars and meetings I've attended, and just think it's important people get that information. One being around, Rich, you've been working with master gardeners as a resource regarding landscaping, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think they're wonderful. First of all, their website, they have a help desk, and so you can phone them up. Or during COVID, they couldn't staff it the way they used to, but I think it's back up fully functional now. But you can always email them. They're really helpful. They do great presentations. If you go to their website, they'll tell you when they are. They're really interesting, the people who work over there. And I just really enjoy working with them. They've really adopted the whole Fire Smart landscape concept out there. So they're a great resource.
I agree. They actually offer garden walks for us. So they'll go out, not only do my staff go out and do home consultations, but master gardeners actually will go out as well to assist customers and do a little bit of the hand holding around finding leaks and understanding how to appropriately irrigate your landscape. So it's a great resource. And they've really fully embraced the whole idea of home hardening while acknowledging the need to have low water use plants. So they're kind of big, the ones that kind of bridge that gap of, you can have low water use landscaping and be fire safe, like what Rich showed in those photos, which are beautiful, all low water use landscapes that are also fire safe. They're a wonderful resource.
Is it the UC Master Gardener program that is, I'm trying to find a website so that I can post it in the chat.
Yeah, it's UC Cooperative Extension. So you Marin
okay.
Master Gardeners.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
On that line, Rich, maybe you could talk a little bit more detail about FireWise USA. A lot of what Carrie just talked about home hardening and such, and people still scratch their heads and go, but how do I know if what we need to do, and how do we evaluate that? So could you talk a little bit more about FireWise USA?
Yeah, so FireWise USA is really a program to organize neighborhoods to work together on fire safety. We have about 75 in Marin, which is the most of any county in the United States. It's a pretty popular program here. Some are really big ones, some are smaller, some are really energized, some less so. Our staff at FireSafe Marin supports them with educational materials. We help them to organize, we help them to do, we used to do a lot of walks and things like that, and then COVID kind of blew everything up, but we're sort of getting back in the spirit of that. So if you're in a FireWise site, then become more active with them. If you're not sure, send us an email and I'll let you know where you are. If you want to start one, we'll help you get one started. But I think in terms of knowing what to do, you really kind of can't go wrong with the FireSafe Marin website as a starting point. Just tons of great videos. We've brought in all year long really good speakers for our webinar program and broken them down into shorter clips. So if you want to learn more about decks or ember showers or Fire Smart landscaping or all these other things we're into, we really have all that, and it's pretty user friendly the way it works. So we're probably the best resource for that.
Wonderful. And Dee Dee just put that in that link in the chat. So that's fabulous. Nancy, you have one more.
I do?
Yeah, Carrie, how widespread is
Oh,
the
yeah.
So we in Marin, you know, we're actually in the forefront of the drought, calling for a 40% reduction and declaring a drought, you know, in April, a drought emergency in April. Actually, a week before, the governor declared a drought up in Mendocino County for Sonoma and Mendocino counties. But it is spreading, right? We're seeing this trend that while we were kind of in the forefront, it is spreading throughout California and really throughout the West, you know, in Arizona, Colorado, other regions as well are beginning to experience or acknowledge the impacts that water supply, climate change and water supply, and that correlation and you know, that it's all kind of shifting and it's becoming more and more of an issue. Lucky us, we're first.
And I had a question earlier before the meeting. How do you decide how to raise this for the water, how to raise rates and how to lower them?
Well, you know, the price of milk has never gone down, so rates don't probably drop. I mean,
Right.
I've never seen it. But rates, so we have a 218 process as far as raising rates, and it's usually a long-term kind of, or a, you know, a mini month process. It's not just something that goes to the board for adoption. Drought rates are slightly different, right? So drought rates are not tied to, they're more considered a penalty, which doesn't require that in-depth kind of process that just standard rates, water rates would require. But the board has elected to defer our drought surcharge, our drought rates that have been on the books. They, you know, acknowledge that there's some reserves that were available, and that prior to, you know, hitting our customers with increased rates while we're calling for an action to conserve, or, you know, calling for reduced demands, that they're going to defer those, and they continue to, you know, they have the option to bring that back before them at any given time. You know, there's a number of studies that actually talk about how rates are the most effective tool for achieving water savings. Like that's, you know, that is number one. And we haven't gone there yet. But if we continue seeing 18% reduction as opposed to the 40% we need, I think it's more likely that they would consider going down that path, but that's up to them. I don't know.
I have a question. I ironically don't live in Marin County. I live in Sonoma County. And so I wonder how coordinated the efforts of both the FIRESafe program and the drought prevention. Do you work with the other counties to promote what you're doing and help them learn from, you know, do you each learn from each other? Or are you just Marin?
Yeah, I'll start. So we have a Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership, which is a collaboration of all water utilities that receive water from Sonoma Water. So it's all of, you know, basically everyone from Cloverdale down to, you know, into Marin Municipal Water District service area. And many of those programs do actually work closely again with the master gardeners, and that's really our link for FIRESafe work around, you know, landscaping and getting the word out. So on the waterfront, there's coordination
Great,
that's ongoing, and it's been like that for well over a decade.
So I was going to say, in terms of, we're a fire council proper, and every county has at least one fire council. We actually meet monthly with the Sonoma Fire Council, so we're pretty tight with them. The California Fire Council is kind of got reinvigorated, and they're starting to hold regional meetings for more of the groups. It's a little complicated because a rural fire council, a rural communities, their concerns are so different than ours.
Yeah.
But the Sonoma is much more like us, and we work closely with them.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Let's
Well,
reassure.
thanks. Oops.
No, I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, sorry. Well, I got it. We're running a little late, but it's been so informative. Thank you so much, Carrie and Rich. It's really appreciate your time, and I think everybody would agree it's been a wonderful meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll find links to everything in the chat box if you would like. So, and for next,
Linda, Well, can I just chime in a sec here?
Sure.
Also to know that after we're done, we will be sending a follow-up email to everybody that'll have all the links in the email, as well as Carrie and Rich's slides. And then by next week, you'll get the link to the recording of today's meeting. Thank you.
So thanks again.
Wonderful.
And next month's speaker will be Christine O'Rourke, who's with Climate Action Network, or is actually her, that's not the real title. It's, what is it? She's with Marin Climate and Energy Partnership. So she'll be joining us next month, and more information will be reviewed a little later on in this meeting about her. So thanks, guys. If you want to stay, you can more than welcome to stay, but I have a hunch you're a little busy. So,
Thank you.
Again,
Bye-bye.
thanks, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity.